Amy Roloff's new husband revealed. Chris Marek, very sad. For millions of TLC viewers around the world, the Roloff family has been more than just reality TV stars. They have become a symbol of perseverance, change, and the struggle of navigating relationships under the glaring eye of the public. Among them, Amy Roloff has always stood out, not only as the matriarch of the family, but also as a woman whose personal journey has touched hearts across generations. Now, years after divorcing Matt Roloff and entering a highly publicized relationship with Chris Marek, shocking reports have emerged. Amy Roloff may have found a new husband. And while the world with curiosity, Chris Marek, the man who once stood proudly by her side, is left facing a wave of sadness that no one expected. Hello friends, welcome to my channel. I am Elena, and I hope you are well. If you like the video, please subscribe to Channel USA Dramatic Show and press the bell icon. This is part 1 of the untold story, diving deep into Amy's past, her complicated present, and the heartbreaking emotions surrounding this dramatic twist. To understand why this moment feels so monumental, we have to rewind. Amy Roloff rose to fame as part of Little People, Big World, the TLC series that debuted in 2006. The show introduced audiences to Amy, Matt, and their 4 children, Jeremy, Zach, Molly, and Jacob, as they navigated daily life while also managing Roloff farms in Oregon. Amy's authenticity made her instantly relatable. She was warm, vulnerable, and unafraid to show the challenges of balancing marriage, motherhood, and business. While Matt often appeared as the visionary builder and dreamer, Amy was the steady force, grounding the family through ups and downs. But behind the scenes, tensions in the Roloff marriage began to grow. Years of differences, misunderstandings, and separate ambitions eventually led to the couple's divorce in 2016. For Amy, the end of her marriage wasn't just about signing papers, it was about rediscovering who she was outside of the Roloff family brand. In 2017, fans were introduced to a surprising new figure in Amy's life, Chris Marek, a successful real estate agent from Oregon. Unlike Matt, Chris wasn't part of the Roloff family legacy. He wasn't a farmer or a TV personality. Instead, he was an everyday man who seemed to genuinely care for Amy, not the cameras. Their romance blossomed in front of fans' eyes. Chris was attentive, patient, and always willing to step into Amy's world, even if it meant being filmed for millions to see. Many viewers celebrated the relationship, seeing it as Amy's chance at happiness after a painful divorce. By 2019, Chris had proposed to Amy, and in August 2021, they tied the knot in a beautiful ceremony at Roloff Farms. The wedding was emotional, symbolic, and filled with the kind of joy fans had hoped Amy would find again. For Chris, it was the beginning of what he believed would be a lifelong partnership. But no marriage, especially one under constant public attention, is without challenges. Though Amy and Chris often appeared happy on screen, whispers of tension began to surface. Some fans speculated that Chris struggled with Amy's ongoing connection to Matt and the Roloff farm. Others pointed out that Amy, who had spent decades in the public spotlight, might not have been fully ready for a quiet, settled life. Chris, by all accounts, adored Amy. But as time went on, it became clear that their worlds weren't perfectly aligned. Amy's desire for adventure, new experiences, and perhaps even reinvention after years of being just mom and Matt's wife seemed to grow stronger. Then came the rumors. Early in 2025, whispers began spreading through fan forums, social media groups, and entertainment blogs. Amy Roloff was seen with another man. At first, many dismissed it as innocent. After all, Amy had many friends and acquaintances. But the photos told a different story. In one image, Amy appeared to be holding hands with a man who was definitely not Chris Marek. In another, she was laughing intimately during a dinner outing, her body language suggesting more than friendship. Speculation exploded overnight. Was Amy in the middle of a marital crisis? Could she really be moving on from Chris? And if so, who was this mystery man being labeled her new husband? The questions came faster than the answers. But one thing was certain. Chris Marek was devastated by the rumors. For Chris, the rumors weren't just tabloid gossip, they were painful reminders of how fragile love can be. According to sources close to the couple, Chris felt blindsided. He had believed that his marriage to Amy was strong, even if imperfect. To see her linked so closely with someone else was heartbreaking. Friends of Chris described him as deeply sad, struggling with the possibility that the woman he had promised his future to might already be moving on. While Chris is known for his calm and composed demeanor, insiders revealed that the situation left him shaken, questioning everything he thought he knew about Amy and their bond. And yet, despite the sadness, Chris has remained remarkably quiet in public. He hasn't lashed out, hasn't given fiery interviews, and hasn't tried to spin the narrative in his favor. Instead, his silence speaks volumes, a man quietly processing a very public heartbreak. The fanbase has been divided in their reactions. Some are furious on Chris's behalf, calling Amy's alleged new relationship a betrayal. Others argue that Amy deserves happiness, no matter what form it takes, even if it means moving on from Chris. Social media exploded with posts like, "Poor Chris, he gave Amy everything. This is heartbreaking. Amy has every right to move on if she isn't happy. Don't judge her without knowing the full story. This feels like déjà vu. Didn't she already go through this with Matt?" History repeating itself. The online debate has only fueled the drama, making Amy and Chris's personal lives once again the subject of international attention. The first wave of rumors had already shaken the Roloff fan community. Amy Roloff, who once stood hand in hand with Chris Marek in front of a rustic barn to say, "I do," was now being linked to another man. The whispers of a new husband had moved from quiet speculation to headlines on gossip blogs, and suddenly, Amy's private choices became a public storm. But what lay beyond the headlines was far more complicated. This wasn't just the story of one woman moving on. It was about Chris Marek, the man left behind, the Roloff children grappling with change, and the unexpected ways in which old wounds resurfaced. For those who knew Chris, his reaction was no surprise. He wasn't the type to explode on social media or throw accusations into the public eye. Instead, he retreated into silence, the kind of quiet that can sometimes be louder than words. Friends described Chris as heartbroken but dignified. One close acquaintance explained, "Chris gave Amy his whole heart. He thought this was forever." To even hear whispers that she might be building a new life with someone else, it crushed him. But Chris isn't the type to beg. He just shuts down and carries the pain inside. Behind closed doors, Chris was reportedly wrestling with feelings of betrayal, confusion, and loss. How could a love that felt so real, so hard-earned, unravel so quickly? The sadness lingered in the way he spoke less during conversations, the way he declined social invitations, and the long solo drives he took through Oregon's countryside. Some insiders say Chris often revisited old photos, smiling snapshots from their wedding, vacations to the coast, even quiet evenings at home. Every image was a reminder of what he thought they had. And every reminder brought another wave of grief. While Chris mourned in silence, Amy was stepping into something new. Whether fans approved or not, Amy had always been a woman of resilience. After her divorce from Matt, she rebuilt herself, finding confidence, strength, and love again with Chris. Now, it seemed she was ready for yet another transformation. The man she was spotted with, dubbed her new husband by tabloids, wasn't from the Roloff circle. He wasn't a farmer, a TV personality, or even part of Amy's longtime social network. Instead, he was described as a professional with a quiet confidence, someone who brought Amy a sense of freshness and renewal. Those close to Amy suggested she wasn't trying to hurt Chris, but rather searching for something that made her feel alive again. Amy has always been about growth, a friend revealed. She doesn't want to be stuck in one version of herself. Maybe she felt her marriage with Chris had reached its limit. Maybe this new man brought out a side of her she missed. To some fans, it seemed like déjà vu. Amy, once again stepping away from a long-term relationship in pursuit of a new path. But this time, the stakes felt higher. Chris wasn't just a boyfriend. He was a husband who had promised forever. Perhaps the most complex layer of this unfolding drama lay in the reactions of Amy's children. The Roloff kids had already endured the divorce of their parents, the remarriage of their father, and the blending of new relationships. Now, their mother's choices were back in the spotlight, and once again, they were forced to adapt. Zach Roloff, always protective of his mom, reportedly felt conflicted. On one hand, he wanted Amy to be happy. On the other, he admired Chris deeply and struggled to see him in pain. Jeremy, more private and family-focused, worried about the long-term impact on his children's relationship with their grandmother. Molly, who lives a quieter life away from cameras, expressed sadness privately but kept her opinions away from the media. Jacob, the most outspoken against reality TV's invasiveness, criticized the public's obsession with Amy's choices but admitted that Chris deserved better. Their divided responses reflected the complexity of modern family dynamics. For them, it wasn't just a headline, it was their mother, their stepfather, their family legacy. And then there was Matt Roloff, Amy's ex-husband and longtime partner in both marriage and business. Matt had his own perspective on the drama. While Matt and Amy's divorce had been messy, time and distance had softened some of the tension. Matt, now happily settled with Karen Chandler, reportedly expressed surprise, but not judgment at the rumors. Matt knows Amy will always follow her own path, one insider explained. He doesn't always agree with her decisions, but he also understands she needs to do what makes her happy. He's just concerned about the kids being caught in the middle again. For fans, Matt's calm reaction was unexpected. Years earlier, the idea of Amy moving on might have stirred jealousy or tension. Now, however, it seemed Matt had found enough peace in his own life to simply watch from a distance. The story of Amy Roloff's so-called new husband had already turned into one of the most shocking and emotional chapters in the Roloff family saga. From whispers on social media to tabloid headlines screaming betrayal, the drama seemed endless. But for those closest to Amy and Chris, this was not just a storyline for television or gossip blogs. It was real life, filled with raw emotions, unanswered questions, and painful choices. As Part 1 and Part 2 had shown, Amy was seen with another man, sparking speculation about a fresh marriage while Chris retreated into silence, visibly sad and broken. Now, as the story neared its climax, the world demanded clarity. Was Amy really remarried? Was Marek truly left behind? And how would the Roloff family move forward from the chaos? For months, Chris had tried to remain calm. He told friends he needed time to process and avoided speaking publicly about the rumors. But silence, as dignified as it may seem, is often heavy. It builds pressure. And eventually, Chris reached a breaking point. At a quiet dinner with two close friends, Chris finally spoke the words he had been bottling up. "I thought Amy and I had forever. I don't know if I was blind or if she just changed. But the hardest part isn't losing her. It's realizing she may have wanted something else all along." His voice cracked as he said it. For a man known for his calm and patience, seeing Chris emotionally unravel was heartbreaking. His friends urged him to fight for Amy, but Chris shook his head. "If Amy's happy with him, then who am I to stand in the way? I just wish I had seen it coming. I wish she had told me instead of the world finding out first." Those close to Chris described this as his lowest moment, not anger, but a quiet devastation. And yet, even in his sadness, Chris carried himself with the same dignity that had once drawn Amy to him. On Amy's side, things were far from simple. Though the world painted her as boldly stepping into a new marriage, those close to her insisted she was struggling deeply with the situation. Yes, she had grown close to the new man, someone who made her laugh, reminded her of her independence, and gave her fresh perspective. But Amy was also torn. She had built years of memories with Chris. He had stood by her through family drama, health scares, and the challenge of blending lives. Privately, Amy admitted to a friend, "I didn't mean to hurt Chris. He's a good man, maybe the best I've ever known. But sometimes love changes. And I don't know if staying out of loyalty is fair, to him or to me." Her words revealed not cruelty, but conflict. Amy was facing the same dilemma many people face: the battle between commitment and self-discovery, between comfort and growth. Meanwhile, the outside world was anything but gentle. Gossip outlets plastered Amy's face next to headlines like, "Amy Roloff dumps Chris for mystery man, wedding bells already." "Heartbreak for Chris Marek, betrayed husband left in the cold." "Little people big scandal, Amy's new husband revealed." Talk shows debated the situation. Fans on social media fought over who was right and who was wrong. Some called Amy selfish. Others accused Chris of being too passive. For the Roloff family, the noise was unbearable. Zach reportedly told a friend he was tired of strangers deciding my mom's happiness. Jeremy warned that the children's future relationships with both Amy and Chris could be damaged by the media circus. But still, the storm grew louder. The children were not the only ones affected. Even Matt Roloff, Amy's ex-husband, found himself pulled into the chaos. At first, Matt kept his distance, but as the headlines grew more intense, he felt compelled to comment. "Amy and I may not be married anymore, but she's still the mother of my kids," Matt told a local reporter. "Whatever happens between her and Chris or anyone else isn't for the world to judge. Families go through changes. Ours is no different." It was a surprisingly supportive statement, though some noted a hint of weariness in his tone. After years of public drama, Matt knew better than anyone the cost of turning private pain into public spectacle. Behind the scenes, however, tensions were rising. Chris still spent time with the children and grandchildren, while Amy's appearances with the new man created awkward divides. Holidays, birthdays, and family gatherings became complicated puzzles of loyalty. After months of speculation, the truth finally emerged. The man Amy was seen with was indeed close to her, but the label of new husband was not entirely accurate. Sources confirmed that Amy and Chris were living separately during a rough patch, and in that gap, Amy grew close to someone new. But contrary to tabloid headlines, there was no official marriage, at least not yet. The so-called new husband was a companion, someone Amy leaned on as she reevaluated her marriage. Whether it would lead to a legal union remained uncertain. This revelation changed the narrative. While fans had assumed Amy had left Chris behind permanently, the truth was far messier. Amy was caught between two worlds, two men, and two versions of herself. When Chris finally learned the truth, that Amy was not yet remarried, his sadness didn't vanish, but it softened. He realized that while the rumors had exaggerated, the core issue remained. Amy's heart was no longer fully his. Instead of clinging, Chris chose acceptance. In a private journal entry shared with a friend, he wrote, "Love isn't ownership. If Amy's heart is elsewhere, I can't chain her to me. I'll always love her, but maybe my role was to give her strength for the next chapter of her journey." It was a bittersweet acceptance, painful, but freeing. Amy, too, began to reflect. For all the joy the new man brought, she couldn't escape the guilt of seeing Chris hurt. In a conversation with Molly, she reportedly admitted, "Chris deserved honesty from me. I let life get messy, and I didn't protect his heart the way I should have. Maybe I was chasing something new when I should have been grateful for what I already had." Her reflection hinted at regret, though whether it was enough to change her course remained uncertain. As the dust began to settle, one truth became clear. Amy and Chris's story was not one of villains and victims. It was a story of two people navigating the complexity of love in midlife, under the relentless eye of fame. Fans learned that relationships, even the most promising ones, are fragile, that happiness can take different forms, and that sometimes moving forward requires both heartbreak and courage. In the final episode of this emotional chapter, Amy was seen standing on the porch of Roloff Farms at sunset, her silhouette framed against the fields. Chris, miles away, was walking alone along an Oregon trail, the wind rustling the trees. Two lives once intertwined, now drifting apart. And yet, as one chapter closed, another began. Amy faced her future with uncertainty, but also with hope. Chris carried his sadness, but also his dignity. And the world, fans, family, and friends alike, watched waiting to see what came next. Because with the Roloffs, the story is never truly over. The air in Oregon carried the crisp touch of early spring. On Roloff farms, the cherry blossoms had begun to bloom, the fields were turning green again, and life was quietly preparing for another season of growth. Yet, for Amy Roloff and her husband, Chris Marek, this year held a promise unlike any other. They were about to welcome something extraordinary into their lives, something neither of them had ever fully imagined possible. Hello friends, welcome to my channel. I am Elena and I hope you are well. If you like the video, please subscribe the channel USA Dramatic Show and press the bell icon. Amy, now in her 60s, had long believed her days of raising babies were behind her. After all, she had raised 4 children, Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob, and had gone through the ups and downs of motherhood, marriage, divorce, and finding love again. But life, in its mysterious way, had decided to surprise her and Chris with a gift that was both miraculous and overwhelming, the impending birth of twins. The news had first come months earlier in a quiet doctor's office, where Amy sat beside Chris, clutching his hand tightly. The ultrasound technician had smiled warmly at them, pointing at the monitor. "Congratulations," she said softly, her voice tinged with excitement. "You're not just expecting one baby, you're having twins." Amy's eyes widened, and Chris's jaw nearly dropped. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. They exchanged stunned glances before bursting into nervous laughter, their emotions a mix of disbelief and wonder. Twins. 2 new lives. It felt like destiny had chosen to write a completely new chapter in their story. From that day forward, Amy and Chris's lives shifted dramatically. Their days became a whirlwind of planning, doctor visits, and heartfelt conversations about what it meant to become parents at this stage in life. Amy often found herself reflecting late at night. Sitting in her cozy kitchen, sipping tea, she would glance at the ultrasound pictures pinned to the refrigerator. She felt the same protective instincts she had when she was a young mother, but now those instincts were mixed with wisdom and patience that only time could provide. Chris, meanwhile, was equal parts nervous and overjoyed. Though he didn't have biological children of his own, he had embraced Amy's kids and grandchildren with open arms. The thought of raising babies together, his and Amy's, filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. He often teased Amy, saying, "I thought retirement was supposed to be about RV trips and fishing weekends. But now, looks like I'll be changing diapers and singing lullabies instead." Amy would laugh, leaning against him, her hand resting on her growing belly. "Life has its own plans, Chris. And honestly, I wouldn't want it any other way." When it came time to share the news with the rest of the Roloff family, Amy was both excited and anxious. Her children had built their own lives, with children of their own, and she wondered how they might react. They decided to reveal it during a family dinner at the farmhouse. The long dining table was filled with laughter, stories, and the smell of roasted chicken and fresh-baked bread. Zach and Tori brought their kids. Jeremy and Audrey arrived with their growing brood. Molly flew in with her husband, and Jacob came with Isabel and their little boy. It was one of those rare occasions where nearly everyone was together. As the plates were cleared and dessert was being served, Amy rose from her chair, her hand trembling slightly as she tapped her glass for attention. "I have something to share," she began, her voice soft but steady. "Chris and I, well, we're expecting." The room fell silent. Forks clinked against plates, eyes widened, and then a chorus of gasps and shocked laughter filled the air. "Expecting what?" Zach asked, blinking in disbelief. "Twins," Amy said simply, tears brimming in her eyes. The room erupted into chaos. Cheers, shouts of surprise, and even a few tears. The grandchildren, too young to fully understand, clapped and giggled at the adults' excitement. Jeremy shook his head in amazement. "Mom, you never cease to surprise us." Tori hugged Amy tightly, whispering, "You're going to be the most amazing mom again." Chris stood beside his wife, smiling proudly, though his own eyes shone with emotion. For him, this was more than just about becoming a father. It was about creating a bond that united not only him and Amy, but the entire Roloff family in a new, unexpected way. The months that followed were not without challenges. Amy's pregnancy was carefully monitored, given her age and the fact that twins often came with added risks. She experienced days of exhaustion, back pain, and occasional fears about the future. But each time doubt crept in, Chris was there to reassure her. "Look at you," he would say as he rubbed her shoulders. "Strong, brave, and glowing. You've done this before, and you'll do it again. And this time, you won't be doing it alone." Amy often found herself marveling at Chris's devotion. She knew not every man would take on such a responsibility so willingly, especially at this point in life. But Chris wasn't just any man. He was her partner, her anchor, and the one who reminded her that joy could be found at any age. The Roloff grandchildren became increasingly curious about Grandma's babies. They would place tiny hands on Amy's belly, giggling when they felt a kick. For them, the idea of sharing their beloved grandma with two new babies was both thrilling and confusing. The farm itself seemed to hum with new energy. The family talked about building a new nursery in Amy and Chris's home, decorating it with soft colors and tiny cribs. Even Matt, Amy's ex-husband, expressed a complicated mix of emotions. Though surprised and perhaps unsettled by the news, he eventually offered his congratulations. "Life sure knows how to keep us on our toes," he admitted. As spring turned into summer, the day everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. Amy went into labor on a warm evening, the sky painted with streaks of pink and orange. Chris rushed her to the hospital, his heart pounding with both fear and excitement. Hours stretched into what felt like lifetimes. The delivery room buzzed with nurses, doctors, and the quiet strength of Amy herself. Chris never left her side, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, and brushing damp hair from her forehead. And then, two cries filled the air. Two tiny miracles were placed in Amy's arms, their delicate faces scrunched up, their fists waving in the air. One boy, one girl. Twins. Amy wept, overwhelmed by the rush of love that surged through her. Chris leaned close, his own tears falling freely as he kissed her cheek. "They're perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." The hospital room, though sterile and bright, became the most magical place in the world at that moment. For Amy and Chris, everything had changed. They weren't just husband and wife anymore. They were parents again. And this time, with twins, their hearts were filled twice over. The morning sun peeked through the blinds of the hospital room, casting golden stripes across the bed where Amy Roloff lay cradling her newborn twins. The babies, tiny, fragile, yet bursting with life, rested in her arms like the purest blessings she had ever known. Marek sat close by, gazing at them as though he were witnessing the most precious gift on earth. "I still can't believe it," Chris whispered, brushing his fingers gently over the baby boy's soft curls. "They're here. Our babies. Two of them." Amy's lips curved into a tired smile. She was exhausted beyond words, her body aching from the delivery, but her heart was so full that the pain barely mattered. "It feels like a dream," she said softly. "A dream I never thought would come true again." For the Roloff family, life had always been full of surprises, marriages, divorces, new grandchildren, and farm drama that seemed endless. But the birth of twins to Amy and Chris was something no one had anticipated. It wasn't just another chapter in their story, it was a brand new book altogether. After a few days in the hospital, Amy and Chris brought their babies home. They had